Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Beth, and this is Mary, and we're part of the team at Writing Magazine and Writers Online. Hi, Mary, how are you doing today?
I'm really well, thank you. Let me get straight into introducing our lovely guest this week. Georgie Codd has worked behind the scenes at a funeral parlour, taught English in a Himalayan nunnery, edited publications for the Tibetan Government in Exile, and shadowed drug dealers in Florida City. She is a graduate of the University of East Anglia's Prose-writing MA, where her flash fictions won the Seth Donaldson Bursary. Her first book, We Swim to the Shark, came out in 2020 and followed Georgie's quest to overcome her deepest fears by crossing the planet, learning to scuba dive, and attempting to swim with the largest fish on the planet, an adult whale shark. Sparked by a trip to Scotland in 2018, Georgie began the quest that would become her second book, Never Had a Dad, which involved advertising to find the ideal father figure. Never Had a Dad has now been optioned for a TV series by a major production company, with Georgie's father-themed project featuring on the BBC World Service, as well as in The Times, iNews, The Daily Mail, and others. Georgie, welcome to the Right Club podcast. Where are you joining us from today?
Hello, lovely to be here. I am joining you from the south coast of England, where it is slightly drizzly, and I'm very glad to be inside talking to you and not wandering the streets.
And is that your usual writing space that you're in? And would you be able to describe it for our listeners?
Yeah, it is. So I'm in a small room here, thankfully next to a window, because I do like to gaze out, kind of looking like an idiot probably into the distance while I pretend to have lofty writing thoughts. But yeah, it's in my flat here. So really, really lucky. I've got a desk that I can transform to a standing or a sitting one, which is probably saving my spinal cord, I hope. And a little chair behind me where I can conk out if it all gets a bit too much.
I feel like everybody's writing space needs to have one of those kind of chairs where when everything just gets too much, just take half-hour nap.
Yeah, just get up and move. I think it's probably a scientific thing as well. If you get up and move, sometimes you get different ideas, and just sitting in a different part of the room or a house or whatever. This is what I tell myself when I get up again for another cup of cocoa.
And we absolutely loved Never Had a Dad, and we can't wait to talk to you about it. But before we go any further, would you just be able to tell our listeners all about it?
Yeah. So I was on a cruise with my mum in 2018. And the reason my mum wanted to take me on the cruise is that my grandmother had died a year before, a couple of years before, and had a bit of inheritance money. So we thought, let's go on this trip and celebrate Granny, because I was raised by my mum and my grandmother in a fatherless household. So we were supposed to be going to Shetland, which I was very much looking forward to. That was the highlight of the trip. And the weather was so pants that we had to do an emergency detour to the mainland because the ship couldn't get in. I say emergency, that was in my head, it's like sirens going off and stuff. It wasn't, sorry, it wasn't like that at all. It was just like, sorry, everyone, we're going to Invergordon. So we went to Invergordon, which I don't know. Have either of you been to Invergordon?
No.
I'm sorry to any listeners from Invergordon who absolutely love their town. It was not Shetland, so I was very disappointed. Um, and kind of moping around the town when one of our fellow passengers, was a man called Peter, who was 70, we kind of befriended him, or he'd befriended us. And he asked, what did we want to do? Should we pop and have a coffee? And there was nothing else going on in town. Sorry again, Invergordon. So we wandered down the high street, found this cafe. Three of us sat on a table of four, and a woman came up to the table and asked if she could join us. And without skipping a beat, Peter said, oh, I was just telling my wife and daughter, it'd be lovely to have some company. And I was kind of astonished and intrigued about what he just said. My mum looked very unimpressed. And I had this split second decision. He was looking very mischievous. I was like, do I join in with this role play, or do I out him as a kind of maniac who's just being really silly in a cafe? And I thought I'd go with it. So I said to the lady, oh, don't mind Pops, he's insane. And she pulled out a chair and sat and joined us. And for the next 20, 25 minutes, we successfully role played being dad and daughter. I'm sure this woman thought we were a really dysfunctional family because my mum basically didn't say anything. And looking at her expression, Peter said to this lady, "Oh, sorry, ex-wife. We like to go on holiday still to keep the family together for Georgina." Anyway, after that role play debacle, whatever, we left the cafe. The woman had left us and headed back down to get some seasickness tablets because that was the theme of the trip. And Peter said to me while my mum was in the pharmacy that he'd always wondered what it would be like to have a daughter because he was unmarried, he'd never had kids. And I thought, oh, I've always wondered what it'd be like to have a dad. Oh, there must be other men out there in the world who've always wanted a daughter, and maybe one of them would be my ideal dad. I mean, statistically, it can't just be Peter who's the only person wondering. So that sparked me to start placing these adverts or dadverts in newspapers and magazines and try and find my ideal dad. And that is how the book got going and the project began.
Wow.
It's such an interesting idea because it's so different and intriguing. I found it a really addictive read. And there's really interesting research in there as well about fatherhood, which apparently is very under-researched. And it made me think obviously a lot about my own life and father figures, and also I think it's about all relationships. So I wondered if the project had gone the way you expected it to, or if you were surprised by the discoveries and insights that you gained.
That's a great question. I found it completely surprising. So my starting point was as somebody who didn't really, when I actually thought about it, didn't really know what dads were for. Seeing as I'd grown up relatively unscathed without one. And I thought, is there really anything that dads can do that mums or grandparents or some other parental figure can't do? And as you've just acknowledged, there's really not that much research about this, which is a surprise. That surprised me. And so I started putting out feelers and trying to talk to different experts around the world. And, what is it that dads do? Is there something that dads do in differently in different countries? What is it that makes a dad? And some of the things I found out were mind-blowing. For example, I spoke to one, I'm trying to remember his exact term. It's like I think evolutionary anthropologist, a guy called Dr. Frank Lengel Williams, who'd done this research into practices like couvard. There's this thing called couvard where in different cultures they have rituals to turn a man into a dad to help do that. And in some, these men will be encouraged to like sit on an egg or, just stay in their house. And some will have these symptoms of labor while their partners are in labor. And actually, Couvard syndrome is a recognized thing all over the world, including the UK, where men pick up similar symptoms of pregnancy, sickness, and things. And then there's another thing about hormones. Our hormones, when a man is around a pregnant woman consistently, his body will start hormonally shifting and changing, and his testosterone levels will drop and never go back up again to what they were before to facilitate caring. And then a man who's consistently around a pregnant female will even produce the breastfeeding hormone prolactin, and his levels of prolactin will become higher than they are in a female who's not had a kid. And it's just all these things that nature does that I didn't know about. And I suppose just that idea as well of we have men and we have dads, and sometimes we have men who have technically fathered somebody, but they aren't really a father, and that was a new one for me. So yeah, super surprising, and I could wang on about it forever. But yeah, it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Because I think you talk about how mothering is a like something that we do, but then fathering is really just about making a baby. Like it's
Yeah,
just so interesting, just the way that words are used and
Yeah, I found it absolutely fascinating. Because I didn't know any of that, and I'm really lucky that I grew up in a household with a mother and a father, and very loving father, um, and I just assumed that that's just what they do. Like the child comes into the world, and then they just become a dad. But
yeah.
you don't think about all of these other things, and I thought that the research that you put into the book was a really special touch, and it really helped to make sense of everything that was kind of going on in your life at the time. And I must admit, a lot of the book, I listened to it on Audible, and obviously you narrated it yourself as well. And I feel like that really like helped bring the book to life, and I was sat there listening to it whilst I was cleaning my kitchen, and genuinely my partner came in and he was like, what the hell are you laughing at? I was like, honestly, this book is absolutely incredible. I just kept laughing to myself so much. I was like, this woman's nuts. like, like this story, I like couldn't even believe that it genuinely was something that was real. I was like, this can't be a memoir. Like it can't be. But it was just, oh, what a story. And honestly, like, hats off to you for putting yourself out there and doing that, because it was just incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. You are probably not the last person who will call me nuts, and you're definitely not the first. But maybe that's another, I think that's an endlessly surprising thing, because I know some of my personality is nuts, but I expect you're also referring to some of the people who made contact as a result. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm getting some nodding there. Some of the people who got in touch with me through my advert were questionable. That's kind of a generous way of putting it. There were lots of people who got in touch who were really great people, and clearly nurturing and just what you want, and no wrong intentions or whatever. But it's always surprising how surprising people can be, I
Yeah.
think. Just when you think you've got a handle on the human race, then someone else gets in touch and you're kind of floored.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it must have been quite difficult for those what people that you were speaking to who you couldn't quite work it out, and you having like your partner's family kind of get involved, and you weren't quite sure whether these people had the right intentions. So that must have been like, I mean, there's the people who you can tell 100%, yeah, they're absolutely fine, they've got great intentions. You can tell the people who've got the complete wrong end of the stick, but it's those middle people where you're like, not quite sure about you, but there's something that's a bit off, and you just can't place it, especially when you hadn't like necessarily met this person as well to see really what they were like.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think anyone who's done any kind of dating ever will understand that, where sometimes you've got someone who will just send you a really inappropriate picture very quickly, and it's annoying. And at the same time, I find it a bit of a relief to go, right, okay, I know what you're like,
Get
or
rid.
I know an aspect of you, and I definitely don't want that, and abort. Whereas those people who, like you say, kind of tread this line, and it might be like a slightly strange word choice, or a reference to something like having their own home to themselves. And you think, are you saying this because you're just describing your life, or are you saying this because you are hinting at something? And the other thing is, I'm a writer. I'm very focused on what words look like and how to express that stuff. Whereas most of these people making contact, they're just, they're not doing that for a living. They haven't done an English degree where they've been taught to read and read and read and read and pull out all meaning from everything. And so sometimes it might be that they've accidentally sounded one way and they're not like that at all. And I really didn't want to, and I don't want to do this ever, judge somebody wrongly because I'm kind of projecting my like super analytical brain onto them, and actually I'm getting the wrong idea. So yeah, it was a really tricky balance at times.
Do you think that's why you like non-fiction and memoir so much? Is that why you want to write about it? Because people are so endlessly intriguing.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. Yeah. I sometimes I love fiction. I started off by writing fiction, and when I did my UEA degree, that's what I was focused on. Um, but I often find fiction slightly unsatisfying because I think, why, why make this up when look out your window and look at these bonkers things that are happening. So yeah, that's a big reason why I write, and to be able to kind of make connections with people and follow the stories that they're offering and go in all sorts of unexpected directions with them. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. And you wrote an article for the August edition of Writing Magazine, and you described turning personal experiences into gripping non-fiction, which is a brilliant article. So I suggest that everybody goes and gives that a read. It's such an interesting topic because the very nature of memoir is that it's so personal, but creative memoir is all about entertaining. So how did you find that right balance? I mean, you did it perfectly to the point where it did feel fiction. But so how did you get that balance?
Um, it's I think it's all about considering your reader, and also thinking about constantly, what books do I like? What books do I keep reading? What stories do I find impossible to put down? And it's things like a hook of a person, something that seems intriguing, and then the narrator kind of veers away for it a bit, and you're left wanting more, and you keep going, and cliffhangers, and those kind of basic but really important storytelling things that I think it can be very easy to forget that those are tools you can use as a nonfiction writer. I think, especially starting out, or maybe if your practice is journaling or I don't know, travel diaries or something, and you're kind of writing for you and to keep a record, or maybe you're writing for someone close to you who you want to share these things with. And then actually, if you're thinking about taking that further and publishing it, it's okay, well, my granny might be interested in this thing I ate on day 3 because it had a really good donut in it. But like, what's the audience? What's the average Joe on the street going to be really interested in? And sometimes that means really stepping back from the writing you're doing and going back to plotting, and not just kind of splurging things out, but thinking, right, I need to strategically I need to craft this story and make it something, yeah, that people can't put down.
I think you did that perfectly with your real dad, Carl, in the book. There were points where I was like, "Oh, have I missed something?" But you just kind of just gave us a little bit, and yeah, it was ultimately even more kind of emotional when you found out, you know, his story. So yeah, that was a beautiful plot technique that you used in it.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was really, it's very difficult writing about traumatic and horrible things, which that is, I won't spoiler anything. It is also, it did take a lot of thinking. So I actually at one point got these like massive cardboard panels. One of my neighbors was chucking a TV away, and I was like, yoink, steal that box. And I cut the panels off and put them in my living room. And then I spent about 3 days writing what are the interesting points that happen in all these stories. So the story with what happened to my real biological dad, if you call him that, And then the story of the dadverts and how that went. And then also the kind of expert input. And it was like all this color coding and right, I want to put that fact in and I need to mention that detail. And I got these Velcro tapes and like it was it took so long and it was so hard and so boring. And I was getting like chafing from cutting tiny bits of paper all day. But that process, finally, I had a breakthrough, and that's how I ended up structuring the whole thing. So, yeah, it did take a lot of pondering behind the scenes.
This episode of the Write Club podcast is sponsored by Arvon. Since 1968, Arvon has been helping writers at every stage of their journey. With inspiring writing retreats and online courses led by leading authors, whether you've got just an hour, a day, or a week to spare, Arvon offers the space, support, and the community to unlock your creativity. And with grants and concessions available, their courses are open to anybody who wants to write. Find out more at arvon.org.
And would you be able to tell us a little bit about your route to publication?
Yeah, so it was long and tricky, which I think is quite a representative story from the industry. I think that the alternative stories of the person who gets snapped up fresh from leaving school and gets a six-figure book deal, that almost never happens. It's the exception that proves the rule. So I did an English literature degree for undergrad, and I almost did maths because I really loved maths and I wanted to do that. But my ultimate goal was I want to be a writer. So, okay, I'll do English literature, I'll study books. And then I was coming to the end of that and thought, okay, well, what's the next step here? And I decided to try applying for the University of East Anglia's Masters because it has such a strong reputation and it's produced all these great authors in the past. Like Ian McEwan and Kazuo Ishiguro were the originals. And that was like the dream ticket. So I'll try and get in there, but it's unlikely. And I have no idea still how I got in there, but I got onto that master's degree. That was a huge boost. So, okay, there's at least two other people who think I can write. And those were the people who accepted me onto the course. And then that whole year, you're workshopping, you're with other people that also are very serious about writing. And I got this feeling like, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to get published. It's going to be great. And then left the degree and slow. Everything just went so slow. So I was working on a novel when I left there and got that finished and thought it was ready to go. And long story short, I ended up writing 3 novels. And each time I thought I was just on the cusp of my book deal, it didn't happen. And I get more and more frustrated. You're spending years on these things. I had 5 agents because I couldn't quite find the agent that was more interested in the thing I was working on at that point, as opposed to the thing I wanted to next. Because it would be like I'd produce the thing and they go, that's great, what's the next thing? And it's just so frustrating. And anyway, I got kind of quite down and fed up with it and decided I was going to do this. I was going to quit my job and I was going to do some traveling. A friend had asked me, did I want to go to New Zealand? Because we had a mutual friend there. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to scuba dive. And I'm going to learn to swim with the world's biggest fish, because why the hell not? Like, I'm bored. I want to do something else. And I told my agent about my plan. And he said, that sounds like a book to me. How about writing a proposal? And that's the joy of nonfiction, that you can write a 10, 15,000 word proposal. This is what I want to do. Will anybody pay me for this? And then ideally, eventually, someone comes back and says, yes, we'll pay you. And that saves 2 years of your life. So that's how I got into nonfiction. But it was slow. Even then it was slow. And I expect you'll have listeners who are perhaps going through equally slow and frustrating periods and perhaps thinking that there's something wrong with them and they'll never get there. And actually, they're kind of part of the treadmill of the publishing industry. It is really slow. It's just really, really slow. So yeah, sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, but that was my route to publication.
Brilliant. And I think that's actually really important for our listeners to hear is that it's not all like roses and everything. It is a slog, and sometimes you might be that really lucky person who just writes a book and it just flies, but more often than not, it is one of those things that you just have to keep kind of knocking away at, and eventually you'll get there. So I think it's really nice for our listeners to be able to hear that kind of real authentic side of publishing, that it, like you say, it's just not always perfect. So that's great for them to hear. And what was,
Can I add
of
something?
course you
Sorry, can
can.
I add something else as well? Just because this might also help anyone who's feeling a bit at the end of their tether. That also, when you get the book deal, sometimes you can think that's it, and that's going to be really easy. And I'm in a creative nonfiction workshop with some friends where we help each other out every month with our work. And I think a lot of us have had books published, and that is slow too. Like you get the book out in the world, and suddenly it's like, oh, why isn't everybody talking about my book? It's so good. Or why isn't anyone talking about my book? Oh, it must be a terrible book. It's really important to have, I think, a sense of not being the only one when you're struggling through writing. And yeah, that absolutely doesn't stop once you get your publishing deal.
Yeah, 100%. Community is a massive thing when it comes to writing, isn't it? And making sure that you've kind of got your little circle who can big you up when you're feeling a bit rubbish, or tell you that actually no, this piece isn't so great, maybe we should change it to this, and having that then people there to kind of help you is a massive thing. And especially, I mean, we see that all the time on Writers Online, and within the magazine as well, that it's so important to have that group of people, because writing itself is a solo job. So you need to have those people outside of that to kind of help you along in your journey. Massively important.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, I actually listened to most of the book on Audible. So what was the process of actually recording that for audio? What was that like?
Oh, I was very excited to do it, and very apprehensive. So the publishers booked 5 days in a studio for it, and said that'll be more than enough. And the book's over 400 pages, and I kind of had a little practice at home, and I was like, how are we going to get through this in that time? But they are absolute pros. I mean, at the studio, they're recording like 6 audiobooks every day type thing.
Wow.
Yeah, so you turn up and maybe hope that some celebrity will be in there reading their celebrity memoir. But yeah, you can't turn up with your book, and they tell you if you can to eat a green apple before you start. Yeah, which I didn't do today. Maybe I should have done. Apparently that cuts through your saliva, so you don't sound like this when you're reading a book, which is quite interesting. And you're put in a booth with I don't know what his official title was, like a sound engineer or something, but there's someone kind of on the other side of a window listening to what you sound like and telling you if you need to stop and re-speak. And like, yeah, kind of arrived and thought there'd be a big preamble, but no, just get in the room and start talking. And it's really interesting. Actually, I always recommend to anyone who's worrying about editing and what the direction their book is going in, always read it out loud anyway, even if it's just to yourself, because you notice things that just aren't quite working, typos, whatever. And we had to stop so many times because I was like, hang on a minute, no, that's not what that should say. And thankfully, this was before the book came out, so there's still time to send the edits back to the publishers. But yeah, lots of talking, very sore throat at the end of the day, lots of water, and yeah, decisions on whether or not to do accents, which I think generally we said, let's not do those, which was probably wise. But it was really enjoyable. Yeah, I'd love to do it again one day, but we'll see.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I feel like it just made it for me, knowing that the person behind what I was listening to was the person that the book was all about. So, yeah, I found it really, really brilliant. And you're hosting an online, or you've hosted an online non-fiction masterclass with Arvon, Quests, Adventures and Escapades at the end of August. Would you be able to just tell us a little bit about that course and if there's going to be more to come?
Yeah, so very excited about it. It went really well, and it's all about how to I kind of like how to pursue adventures is a small strand of that, but it's mostly how to turn those adventures into really gripping prose. So some of the stuff we were talking about a bit earlier in this chat about hooks and tools and little tricks that you can use to really ramp up that engagement with the reader. And also, I think just it was about giving encouragement to people to that those adventures are what people want to read. I don't know anyone who doesn't love an adventure story. They're perfect. You've got a quest, you've got something you've got to go after. There's always something in the way. It's like ideal for structure and plot. So yeah, it's still available online on the Arvon website. So anyone who wants to go and watch that and maybe just get a bit more encouragement and get those ideas to really make something pop, that yeah, strongly recommend. I'm allowed to strongly recommend something I've done. But yeah, yeah, you're nodding. Yeah, I'll strongly recommend it. Go check it out.
I'd love to know where your desire for quests, adventures, and escapades comes from.
Oh, that's a really good question. It might be as simple as I get bored really easily. Um, and also it's not quite that though. It's I really like, and I think we all do, I love purpose. Purpose is everything. And if you can wake up in the day, in the morning, usually, sorry, if you wake up in the morning and you've got a reason to get up, get going, something to aim for, that's my favorite state of mind. So and writing about adventure, you get double whammy. So there's the actual adventure and then the kind of purpose of writing that and sharing that. But it also helps me interact with the world and interact with quite scary things. So I can put my writer's hat on and go looking for a dad, which is something I would have otherwise kind of probably yearned for and thought, no, I can never do that. It's too scary. People are going to be mean. I'm going to get rejected or attacked or both. Um, Whereas writing about that, I could, and I didn't know whether it was going to be shared with anyone else, but that was the mindset I went into. Like, if everything goes horribly wrong, I can write about it. And that gave me the courage. And it was the same with the book about the sharks as well, you know, the courage to keep going. Maybe someone will be interested in this one day. And if not, it'll be a good story at the pub.
I totally relate to it because there's things that I've done for work that I would be too nervous to do, just because I wanted to do them. But if someone says, "Oh, can you go and do this for us?" You're like, "Yeah," and you've got the, bit of bravery, and have new adventures, and it's so yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I think absolutely. And like we all take on different roles sometimes, don't we? And performances and I think sometimes as well just being given permission to do it as well, and being told, yeah, that's a worthwhile purpose to have. Go after it. Those are all the things. It would be great if we all felt we could just give ourselves permission to do all the adventures that we want. And maybe that's what all of us can work towards. But in the meantime, yeah, writing or someone above you, an agent, a boss, or whatever, those can be really helpful too.
Yeah, definitely. What does a typical writing day look like for you?
Ooh, so typical writing day, I will get my giant cup of cocoa. It has to be the giant cup, and come to my study, get the emails out of the way. So I work as a freelance writer and editor as well as the creative writing. So I've got to make sure that I'm doing what my clients want as well, because if I don't do that, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills. So I get that out the way, and then I try and do either, well, I try and work towards a word count when I'm in a project. So I like 1,500 words. That's a nice word count. And so I will bash away to get my 1,500 words. And usually it's a lot quicker than I think it's going to be. Um, and once I get there, if I feel in the mood to keep going, I will. Otherwise, I can abandon ship and not feel too guilty about it. So yeah, I think it's really important, that balance of getting the work done, but also not being too hard on yourself. And I mean, I've got friends who write 7,000 words a day, every day. Like I say friends, actually, it's one friend. It's not representative at all. But there are those writers out there who can do that every single day. She uses meditation. Like she does about, I think it's about half an hour meditation every morning, then does her 7,000 words, then does a half an hour meditation afterwards. And that's her secret. I like to meditate sometimes, but I still struggle with the 7,000 words. There are very few days where I get that high. So like I try and make it smaller and more manageable.
Yeah, more achievable for sure.
Yes,
Tell us, are you working on something new at the moment?
I am. Yeah. So I'm working on another quest. Surprise, surprise.
Brilliant.
It's still in the kind of early stages, but very broadly speaking, it's about the feeling of invisibility. So it's slightly more abstract than the second and first books, but also there's a backstory to it, like there is in my other two books, um, of something that happened to me in my life that was quite unexpected and unpleasant, that produced a feeling of invisibility in me. I became very interested in this feeling and why did it spring up and who else is feeling that way. And so I've been doing all these side adventures in different places, looking for invisible people and things like that. So that's the next one.
Oh, wow. I'm very intrigued by that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I hope I can pull it off.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. We can't wait to see that one. When do you think that might be ready for us to feast our eyes on?
Oh, probably quite a while. So we're waiting to hear if the publishers want it at the moment. And that process, as we kind of alluded to earlier, and I'm sure you've spoken with other writers about it, that can take so long. So I expect it's often that you get the publishing deal and then it'll be like a year or 18 months or 2 years after that until publication. So realistically, we're probably talking 2027, 2028, which is feels like forever away. But I'll do my best to get it there quicker.
It'll come round sooner than you know it. Seems to be getting faster and faster.
I know, it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And we always like to end by asking for a book recommendation. Is there something that you've read recently that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, there is actually. And it's not a recent book, so I hope that's not cheating. But there's an incredible book that I found in a secondhand bookshop called The Lobotomist by an author called Jack L. High. And it's about, I mean, this is a really random topic, I know, but it's about the invention of lobotomies and the guy who began them and did them in a very maverick and dangerous way. And it's obviously it's nonfiction and it spills out into talking about treatment for mental health more generally. And I just found it fascinating. It's one of those books that tells you so much, but you can't stop reading it. It's like it's paced and interesting, and there's some gory bits and some kind of shocking bits. And yeah, I was very, very excited to. I mean, I bought it in the shop because it sounded great, and then got home and was like, "Oh my God, this is brill!" So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. And thanks so much, Georgie, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on the Right Club, and we wish you all the best of luck with, well, both of your books and the new one. And we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the Right Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Right Club. Until next time, happy writing.